Hey guys, what is up? It is me, Pagey, here once again with another video on just DC live action and I guess the DC multiverse as a whole. So about 2.5 years ago, actually it was a bit longer, wasn't it? It was about 2.5 years ago that it ended. Anyway, so about just over 2.5 years ago, we had the Crisis on Infinite Earths event hit our screens on the various CW DCTV shows, or as most would call them, the Arrowverse shows. And of course, this was after a couple of years of build-up within other crossovers like Elseworlds, for example, or just the shows themselves. Now, this event consisted of heroes of multiple Earths within the Arrowverse coming together to defeat a common foe, ending with the merging of all the Earths of those involved into one single Earth, that of course being Earth Prime. Now, of course, this event also brought in various elements of other DC TV shows from the past, as well as the film side of things in like some capacity. Now, of course, Crisis on Infinite Earths isn't something invented for TV. It wasn't like a brainstorming session made by the guys that were behind the TV shows. It's obviously from a comic storyline. So due to that, the door was always going to be open for the film side of DC to adapt that storyline as well, have their own take on it. And it sounds like that's what is or was planned. So recently, the Hollywood Reporter put out an article sort of, how would you say, like breaking down, I guess, some behind the scenes stuff going on at Warner Brothers and DC, where some things were made public by a larger source, though it wasn't the first time they were brought up in a public space, if that makes sense. So while talking about current president of DC Films, that of course being Walter Hamada, the Hollywood Reporter said this: Hamada's plans were said to have included a Crisis on Infinite Earths event, a take on the seminal DC comic story that was also adapted for TV on the CW. Now, that article just doesn't include that one little quote there, of course. It goes into much more depth with the various other, movies and projects and everything like that. So it goes over a bunch more for those that are interested, but we are just focusing on that pulled quote because it's, what we want to talk about. So the link will be in the description down below for those that want to go read the entire thing afterwards. Now, this Crisis event movie being a thing, or, being in the thinking space of the people that are behind DC in the film side isn't really news. It was just the first time that a larger publication like the Hollywood Reporter or like Variety or any of those places has talked about it. There have been insiders such as Casey Walsh, for example. He's one person I saw who was like fairly consistently talking about it, and also they're just like a fairly consistent insider or scooper, whichever way you want to put it, and they were talking about it for a bit. Like I'd say, like for the past year or so, they've been talking about it or referencing it when someone's brought it up. And of course, Jim Lee also did a lot of Crisis-related artwork for DC Fandom last year, incorporating both the film and TV side of things, which didn't really feel like a coincidence. It felt like that was intentional. It was like, are they suggesting that that's going to be happening and that it will include, both sides of things? So it's not like it's this massively like secretive and like held off thing. Like they've hinted at it, if not just straight up talked about it in previous years. Now, of course, one of the big freak out things that's been happening over the past year or two, actually probably about 2 years in like the DC Films thing, has been the fact that Michael Keaton is coming in to play Batman. We know, starting in The Flash was going to be an Aquaman, but because of the weird scheduling, now he's not going to be an Aquaman. Of course, he was in the cancelled Batgirl movie. Now, of course, whether they continue with Michael Keaton is a question mark. But obviously, the original plan is that he was, or at least this is what it looks like, is that he was only ever going to be Batman for a short amount of time anyway, leading up to this Crisis event. Obviously, they had all the Ben Affleck issues, with him leaving the role and everything like that. So it's just like, okay, well, we can use a recognizable face in Michael Keaton's Batman, to fill the void for whatever short period of time it is. And then we have this Crisis event where that's the end of Michael Keaton's Batman. You get to celebrate it while also, moving on to the next era in, the DC film and I guess the Batman of that main universe. So I understand why people were freaking out, because it's like, well, hold on, how can you have this much older Batman than every other character within the Justice League is much younger? But it's because it was never meant to be for that long of a time anyway. It was sort of just like a temporary thing until they move into this event potentially. Now, of course, when you're doing something like Crisis on Infinite Earths or any sort of big event like this, what would be expected in this Crisis movie? Like, would it be like the TV version, except I guess just bigger? Like, would you get 2 films, or will they try and do it in like a 2.5, 3 hour version? And also, like, in regards to who's appearing, are you going to get the best of TV and like the best of movies as well combined? Like, you get a lot of familiar faces and stuff like that. I guess the issue with DC side of things is that though it's existed in a cinematic sense for like 50 years or something like that, most of the times it's been just Batman, Superman, Batman, Superman, Batman, Superman, and there hasn't been like a variety, if you want to call it. Those really just been Batman and Superman, and it wasn't until like, you know, the 2010s and where we are now that they started using other characters consistently. So you're really just going to be ripping from TV for the most part if you do want some, you know, familiar faces that aren't just another version of Batman or another version of Superman. Now, in regards to the actual story, I've always said this: Crisis isn't like this amazingly written story. Like, it was made, like the people that have written the actual story, and DC have said this, it was pretty much to clean up the universe. It wasn't like this great creative, you know, piece of writing or anything like that. So people complain about that with the TV version, even though I'm like, well, it was never meant to be amazing anyway. So the movie side can have its own fun with it if it goes down that route. So, you know, you include the anti-modern most likely, but it's not like you have to like be overly faithful, because it's just the general idea of Crisis that you want to have fun with. And I guess it just sort of depends on what characters you're using, because not all the characters that are in the comic might be associated or built up in the, you know, the movie side of things. You don't want to be introducing like 10 new characters that really you don't have much plans to do, at least within like the short term. But one of the big things from Crisis is the fallout and the aftermath. Like, the whole point is to sort of clean up your universe. So what's the actual cleanup? So to put it in simple terms, what should we expect in the aftermath of this crisis, or this potential crisis movie event? So while the TV event side of things really just used it to merge the Earths with like some slight alterations, because there wasn't really a need to alter too much, the film side of things would do a lot different in regards to the aftermath. And here are just some changes I would expect, you know, following this potential crisis film. The obvious one, which we've already referenced, is a Keaton Batman swap. You know, only there for the short term, so post-crisis as a new Batman. Now, the big question around this is that would you be swapping to Robert Pattinson's Batman as the main Batman, you know, situated in a main Earth? And that's like a 50-50, because it depends what's going on with his franchise. They've said that, like, you know, they'd want to do a trilogy within that, amongst like other spin-offs and everything like that. And it seems like they just want to do a Batverse, like a Batman associated universe with no other like outside characters coming in. So Pattinson becoming that main Batman would be it might be a bit of a challenge to get across the line, you know what I mean? Because it just depends, like, logistically what's happening with them at that time. So, and you don't know if he wants to be doing that long term. So if that's the case, and he like straight up says, look, I don't really want to do that and everything like that, then they might just cast a new Batman, possibly, you know, maybe not a super young one, because then you'd be competing with Pattinson, but maybe somewhere between Pattinson and Affleck, like someone in like the middle of their Batman career rather than the beginning or the end, like we saw with Pattinson and Affleck. Another obvious one is like a change of guard for certain characters. It just depends when the movie would happen, like a new Aquaman, for example, maybe a new Wonder Woman. It depends how long until it was happening, the age of certain actors, and whether they want to continue. And like it, with a change of guard also means, like, you know, maybe it's not Aquaman, it could be Aqualad. Or with Wonder Woman, maybe it's not Wonder Woman, maybe it's Wonder Girl, whatever it might be. And then those characters build up to the point where maybe they take those mantles in years to come. But I think a changing of the guard would probably happen with at least a couple of characters, you know, even outside of Batman as well. And even just like if they don't have a solid Superman, for example, they actually like hammer down who's the main Superman, for example, or whatever it might be. Obviously, we have the whole Ezra Miller Flash stuff that they'd probably recast as well, but I think that would probably happen before this movie even takes place. And the last one is an obvious one, because it's just the basis of Crisis as an event and a thing itself, and that's like an overall cleanup of canon and the timeline as a whole. Like, you just expect that to happen, whether it's removing certain events happening, whether it's removing characters ever meeting or something happening to a certain character. Just general things like that you'd expect to go down. It just matters like how much they would do, because, you know, you sort of get free reign. You're sort of building your own new universe with familiar faces, so you can sort of pick and choose what did and didn't happen, or at least when that. So something might have happened 10 years ago, but you can change it where it happened 20 years ago or 2 years ago, something like that. Now, because this Crisis movie was in the works with Walter Hamada, you know, this was obviously before this new merger that's happened with Warner Brothers Discovery. So will this new merger change these Crisis plans and the overall plans that DC had in regards to the cinematic side of things? They cancelled Batgirl, for example. We talked about that, and there's a question mark on other properties going forward. So will they even use this type of event, or will they just like reboot or soft reboot the DC side of things without this event? I think it could go either way, because people would say you have to build up to Crisis, but I don't know. I think there's not enough there with DC. Like, I think if they're doing Crisis, you're not going to expect it in like 15 to 20 years. And so if they want to do it and use it to reboot and clean up the universe, I'm fine with that, because you still have, you know, some, you know, historical characters on the movie and TV side of things, which you can bring in, while also having at least enough characters within that main DC film side of things as well to use within that event as well. So it's probably a flip of the coin which way they'd want to go, because they clearly would want to clean up and reboot some things just because of how things have gone over the past couple of years with certain people, just how things have transpired. But it just matters, I guess, which road they go down. Crisis or just a random reboot without really having an event for it and just making it happen out of the gate in one of the movies. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, it'd be awesome if you could drop a like on it to show support. Let me know in the comments section down below your various opinions on this. Would you want to see a Crisis movie? Do you think it's too soon? Do you think they just need to build the universe too much? Or could you use some of those historical characters to come in and play a part? Let me know your opinions in the comments section down below. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, and I will catch you guys later. Goodbye.